Hello everyone. This is the main idea for day 11. Yesterday we talked about rate and how rate factored into equations and patterns and sequences. Eventually, we want to use that rate that we came up with yesterday to make equations or rules about sequences, because like we said, sequences can be infinitely long, which means we can't write out the whole thing. Infinitely long. So we can't write up the whole thing. So it's really worth coming up with an equation instead of writing out the whole thing, because literally that would take forever. So we've talked about the rate, but there's another thing that we're going to need, and some of you may have noticed that a couple of the patterns had the same rate. So just looking at the rate is not going to be able to tell enough about the pattern to make it unique. The next thing we're going to need to keep track of the sequences are the term numbers and starting points. Starting points. As long as we have a starting point, we can keep track of where we started and then where we're going. So that's what we're going to be working on today. For example, let's do this first one together. My first shape, we said, is, and this is one of the patterns from yesterday, had 4 squares, the next one had 7, and the next one had 10. Now, what we want to do is find the value that doesn't have any rate attached to it. So you'll notice with each of these, we're adding onto the rate every time. But I want to find out what it would have been before we added any rate. So if this is my first, second, and third, I'm curious what my 0th would have been. Well, if we're following the same pattern by adding 3 every time, this would have to be -3. So this would actually be at 1. So that 0th term is going to be 1. We're going to use the 0th term to be our starting point. And the reason why is it is the term, it is the value before any of the rates have been added to it. So we're going to use the 0th term as our starting point.